Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie Groeschl, registered dietitian and mom of three. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Heyo, welcome back to the Wellness That Fits podcast. Today, we are going to continue the series. I'm talking about nutrition psychology, which is basically what you're eating and how it's impacting your mental health. A lot of women I work with have anxiety, low energy, brain fog, and what they don't realize is how much food really impacts their clinical outcomes and managing their symptoms. And so I'm going to talk a lot today about fiber, butyrate, and mental health. Now, most women think fiber is just about digestion or helping things along, and it's not. Fiber is one of the most powerful mental health tools that you're probably under eating. And I know that because 90% of Americans are not getting enough. The average intake of the American diet is 15 grams of fiber. So what we actually need is the recommended amount, I should say, is 25 grams for women and 38 grams for men. Again, our actual intake is really around the 15 grams per day. So we're significantly under eating fiber. And I wanted to talk today more about the real role of fiber that maybe you're not familiar with. I'm going to talk about short chain fatty acids, or the metabolites of fiber, and mental health. And then we'll get into some whole foods versus supplements and what we're seeing in the research. And then how to diversify your fiber, because that's really important. And then I'll give you some actual, or I should say practical application tips to include more fiber, to increase your fiber if you are one of those 90% of Americans who are not getting enough fiber. Okay, so let's start out with the real role of fiber. Fiber feeds your gut bacteria. When gut bacteria ferment fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids. And so some common short-chain fatty acids are butyrate, acetate, and propionate. Now, butyrate, we're going to talk more about this one today, so I won't really discuss it too far in depth, but I wanted to mention acetate and propionate. So acetate is a major metabolite. It acts as a crucial energy source, and it helps maintain the gut barrier integrity. And so basically you have a whole bunch of cells throughout your digestive tract that are all kind of held together one cell at a time. And one cell by one cell by one cell, and there's these little junctions between it. And so having more acetate, I should say, it's one of the major metabolites of fiber breakdown, can help support that gut barrier integrity. So if I actually want to back up here, because I feel like if you just hear the word fiber, and you're not really sure some of the science behind it, I just want to say this. Fiber is one of those nutrients that goes through your body that as a human, we don't have the enzymes to digest fiber, to break down those large molecules. However, the gut bacteria that we have living in our gut, the microbiome, they have the capacity to, and they have the enzymes to break down those larger complex molecules that we do not have the machinery to do in the human body. And so oftentimes we'll refer to them as commensal bacteria because they are living within us symbiotically. They are usually good for us. Now we could get into a discussion of specific strains of bacteria and their effects on human health, but that is a discussion for another day. I'll actually mention a little bit. But so anyway, when we talk about fiber, we're talking about the benefits, right? Not only moving stool through your body faster, but also some other benefits that it has. And we don't necessarily digest it down into these metabolites, but the idea here is that the bacteria that we have living in our gut has the ability to break down these larger molecules and turning them into metabolites that our body can actually use, and that oftentimes has beneficial, the ones I'm talking about today mostly have beneficial effects. So acetate, like I said, it's one of the major metabolites, acts as crucial energy source, maintains that gut barrier integrity. It reduces inflammation and it regulates metabolism, and high levels of it are linked to improved health. So acetate's one of the good metabolites. Propionate is another one. Propionic acid is a beneficial short chain fatty acid, and it's primarily produced in the gut by beneficial bacteria fermenting dietary fiber, including Bacteroides and Propionibacterium. And Akkermansia is another one that produces propionate. It aids in immune function and it strengthens the gut barrier also, along with acetate. And what I actually found in the research is excessive levels of propionate, which is often caused by dysbiosis, are linked to metabolic issues or neurological conditions. And so propionate is one of those ones that is beneficial, short chain fatty acid, but excessive levels, again, linked with dysbiosis or different levels of bacteria that are taking over one another, that actually can lead to additional issues, metabolic issues, neurological conditions. There were some studies done on autism and some other ones that I do want to dive into more. If that's something that interests you as a listener, please let me know, because I was certainly interested in that. Again, as it relates to brain health, I always love looking into that research. All right, so all of these short chain fatty acids directly impact your brain. Now, like I said, we're going to mainly talk about butyrate today. It's one of the key important short chain fatty acids, and it reduces neuroinflammation. It supports blood-brain barrier, and it influences gene expression. So, when we look at short chain fatty acids in mental health, we have a number of animal and human evidence that shows that short chain fatty acids influence serotonin pathways. And lower short chain fatty acids are linked with depression. So, research has shown in many studies that several mood disorders like anxiety, depression, and autism spectrum disorders now have well established links to functional GI disruptions. And in GI disease, so for example, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or IBD, which is irritable bowel disease, we often see mental health symptoms linked with changes in the bacteria living in the gut. We also know that the Western diet, which I talked about before, has been shown to influence the gut microbiome's impact on cognitive function. How does it do this? The Western diet consumption, more of a Western diet style eating pattern, increases the production of endotoxin by bacteria, which may promote neuroinflammation and cognitive dysfunction. So when I say it increases the production of endotoxin by those commensal bacteria. Those endotoxins could be lipopolysaccharides, which are LPS, and those are heat-stable structural components of the outer membrane of gram-negative bacteria, like E. coli, like Salmonella, and they're released when the cell dies or when the cell is growing. So that LPS is released and is considered an endotoxin and can wreak havoc in our guts under certain situations. So Western diet, though, tends to see an increased production of those endotoxins. Okay, so when people don't get enough fiber, the helpful gut bacteria, because we have some bacteria that are a little more on the helpful side and some that are quote unquote bad. What's more important is really having a balance of them, and that one is not outgrowing the other unless it is the good bacteria, and we have more diverse species of the good bacteria. When people don't get enough fiber, helpful gut bacteria start using sugars from our own bodies instead. So oftentimes they're getting them from the mucus layer that protects the intestines. And this can damage that protective layer and make it easier for harmful germs and bacteria to cause infection, inflammation, and disease because they are getting through, this is kind of what we call leaky gut, right? So it's getting through the endothelial cells into the system, into the body. And this effect has been clearly shown in animal studies and even human studies. And so it's hard to measure this mucus layer directly in humans, but research shows that eating a high fiber diet can change gut bacteria so that they focus more on breaking down plant fibers instead of the body's own tissues. And this shift is linked to lower inflammation because the diet provides the glucans and the sugars that bacteria is looking for rather than the bacteria getting it through the mucosal lining in our gut. Okay, so wanted to explain that science a little bit more, especially as it pertains to some of the endotoxins in the bad metabolites of the bacteria in the gut. And now I want to get back to talking about the short chain fatty acids and its link with depression. So I was looking at a systematic review and a meta-analysis done by Jingshan Li et al. It was published recently, published in April of 2026, and it looked at how gut short chain fatty acids are linked to depression. So we already know short chain fatty acids are helpful substances made by gut bacteria. And what the researchers found is what they did was they combined the results from 16 case control studies and 6 randomized control trials and found that people with depression had lower levels of these helpful chemicals or the short chain fatty acids in their blood compared to healthy people. They also looked at studies where people took probiotics or prebiotics, things that support healthy gut bacteria. These treatments increased the levels of short chain fatty acids in the gut. When these levels went up, people's depression symptoms often improve. And that's really what we're looking at. And that's what's most important is that higher levels of short chain fatty acids or lower levels of inflammatory markers. Is it actually improving the symptom or the clinical outcome that we're looking for? And what was really interesting about the study is that yes, when these levels of short chain fatty acids went up, people's depressive symptoms often improved. That's the outcome we're really looking for. So in simple terms, the study suggests that gut health and brain health are connected. Lower levels of helpful gut chemicals or lower levels of the short chain fatty acids may be linked to depression, and improving gut bacteria might help people feel better. And before I get into the application of how to actually improve your plant intake and fiber intake, I just wanted to talk about whole foods versus fiber, like whole food fiber, getting your fiber through whole foods versus getting your fiber through fiber supplements. Now, fiber supplements are easy to use and can help with certain health problems like high cholesterol, blood sugar issues, and also constipation. They also affect the bacteria of the gut in specific ways. And sometimes I would say they're more so used for targeted symptoms like certain fibers are good for cholesterol reduction and certain fibers are good for constipation. But the proof that they work well overall in general for everybody, right, is limited because everybody has different strains of bacteria in their gut. And so their benefits are often less consistent and not as strong as eating whole food plants. This may be because supplements don't have all the natural parts found in whole foods. Some types of fiber supplements may even cause negative effects. While fiber supplements do change the gut microbiome, usually in research, these changes don't always lead to clear health benefits. So like I said, sometimes, of course, they do. We see good results of fiber supplementation, especially in targeted populations, or if you have symptoms that you're trying to target. There's so much more research on eating whole foods and the fiber that we can get through whole foods, because whole foods contain multiple fiber types. Like I said, they contain polyphenols, they contain micronutrients, protein, healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, things like that. And so likely in a lot of these huge studies where we're seeing like Mediterranean style eating patterns, like I mentioned in the last episode, there's a synergistic effect going on. It's like not just the fiber. It's not just the fiber supplementation. It is the plant, the fruit, the veggie, the whole grain as a whole, the nutrients that it provides, the different types of fibers all in one food. It's that synergistic effect that is impacting your health and showing more of a clinical outcome, especially as we look at depression and anxiety. So one thing I wanted to mention, and I I've talked about this before, but I think this research is really important because when we're talking about the short chain fatty acids um, and increasing it, it's really important to increase the fiber diversity and the plant diversity. And so, like I said, I've mentioned the American Gut Project before. This was a study done with 11,000 participants, a lot. And what they found is that higher plant diversity led to greater microbiome diversity, which makes sense. So, the greater number of plants that you're eating, whether it's nuts, seeds, fruits, veggies, whole grains, oats, wheat, barley, all of that, higher plant diversity leads to a greater microbiome diversity. And more diversity leads to greater short chain fatty acid production. Again, we want more short chain fatty acid production. Those are the metabolites of the bacteria in our gut. The metabolites usually of the plant fibers that we are putting into our body. And so again, most women, they're under eating fiber. They're eating low diversity fiber. And please don't get me wrong, I have been there also. I have, sometimes a list of like easy foods that I know I will eat, the kids will eat, my husband will eat. It's like our easy go-to. For example, romaine. I can't tell you how much romaine we eat in the house. It's wonderful because it's a leafy green. It's also like crispy, right? It's not like a dark leafy green that can be a little stronger flavored. But we were getting to a point where there was not a lot of diversity in our diets in terms of the types of leafy greens that we were eating. And so we have really diversified since then. And it's just really important that we are eating as many plant foods as we can. And I want to make sure that we are supporting our microbiome. And so again, I use that example because even if you're eating quote unquote healthy, you may not be producing enough of these brain supportive compounds like the short chain fatty acids. And so you might be having your high protein chicken salad with 40 grams of protein every day and it's romaine salad, you're getting like 3 grams of fiber. It's just likely not going to cut it for the fiber that you do need in your body, the fiber that the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria need to create those short chain fatty acids. And so it's really important that we can diversify, first of all, improve and increase the fiber in our diets. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but also diversify. So what does this look like? Instead of just like eat more fiber, let's focus on the number one thing really. And I think it's like the easiest thing too is diversity. So instead of like eat more, right? Add another veggie, which is great advice too. But what if I just said instead of your romaine salad or instead of just like think of the couple veggies that you always eat or the couple high fiber foods that you're always eating and see what kind of swaps you can make. So I'm not necessarily asking you to add more right now. I'm asking you what swaps can you make to increase the diversity. Basically, in the end, what we really want to do is aim for 20 to 30 different plant foods per week. And so go ahead and count all those plant foods that you're eating right now and see where you're at. But it's interesting because I think we really get in those, I don't want to even call it ruts. We get in those seasons where we know what works for us, we know what works for our family, and we just go with it. It's just like another thing you have to think about to increase diversity of plants. I know. And so it's just something so simple as in your Instacart or like if you go grocery shopping in person, throw in one new plant food. And it can be anything. It doesn't need to just be veggies. It could be barley. If you haven't tried barley, if you haven't tried wild rice, in a long time, and you want to substitute it or swap it for your regular white rice stir fries or something, like just swapping those couple things every week can really help diversify your fiber sources and in turn, help nourish the bacteria and help grow up those other species of bacteria that are really good and can help with the short chain fatty acid production. The diversity, that's a big thing, right? Another thing, specific fibers. Think about including resistant starches like potatoes and rice that have been cooked and cooled. I am a huge fan of meal prep for not only the time it saves and the reduced mental fatigue, but also in the fact that if you're making your potatoes and like rice ahead of time, which I almost always do, then you are increasing the resistant starch, which is a really good type of fiber. So resistant starch, inulin, something to think about. Inulin is found in onions and garlic, also pectin found in apples. Increasing legumes is awesome. Beans, lentils, legumes, because it has a lot of them have protein, healthy fats, and those complex carbohydrates, and then of course the fiber component. And so you'll get a lot more protein off of those foods. So it's like a fiber protein combo, which is a really nice thing to add to your lunches and dinners. And then fruits and veggies in general, just increasing, some of those high fiber fruits and veggies. When we're talking about fruits, high fiber fruits would be like raspberries, blackberries, kiwi. If you keep the peel on, it's really not that bad. And then veggies, gosh, there's so many, but I just want to give this comparison that like romaine salad, like a couple cups of romaine is only like a few grams of fiber. So it's not a lot. And so if you can include some peppers and maybe throw some cannellini beans on a salad, that's really what's going to help increase your fiber content. Okay, and now on this note, if you have GI issues like IBS or IBD, your fiber protocol may look a little different than somebody else's. So there might be some fibers to avoid right away and then reintroduce later. And so it's another discussion really. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I think there are a lot of people who have anxiety and mental health disorders and in depression who also have some of those like gut brain interaction sort of comorbidities. So people who have anxiety, oftentimes you'll see some sort of gut issue and vice versa. So if somebody has IBS or IBD, you might also be experiencing some mental health symptoms like more anxious or mood changes or unstable mood because those go hand in hand with that gut brain connection. And so again, if that is you, I would say maybe take a deeper look or talk to me. Like I said, I like to show up in my DMs and we can have a conversation there. And then lastly, really slow introduction. So increase fiber by 5 grams for a few days, even a week, if you notice your body is very sensitive to that fiber introduction. Then increase it by another 5 grams and then slowly continue to increase until you hit your 25 or more. We've seen some really great results with more plant fibers in the diet, closer to like the 30, 40 grams. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then while you are doing that slower introduction of fibers, ensure adequate hydration to move that fiber along so you're not getting constipated or having a lot of gut issues and then stopping fiber because you don't want to deal with it. And then lastly, consistency. Your microbiome adapts over time, not overnight. So don't expect any of this stuff to happen overnight because it takes time. So food, fiber, brain health. This is exactly what I do. I love it. I help women reduce anxiety and improve mental clarity using targeted nutrition supplements at times when needed. But we are focusing on that foundational nutrition piece, that foundational food is medicine piece. And so if you're a high performing woman who feels like her brain just can't keep up anymore, it's just not doing what it used to, and you're tired of feeling anxious and exhausted, probably unstable mood, and you just want a structured plan, my brain health and energy protocol is where we implement this step by step. It's not overwhelming. You have enough to deal with in the chaos of your own life. I have this protocol based on all of the research that I talked about today and plus additional research based on women in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And so if you want to know whether your current eating habits are helping or worsening your anxiety, take my quiz. I'll link it in the show notes, but this is a great way to really give you at least a snapshot of if what you're eating is contributing to some of these symptoms that you're experiencing, especially like that exhaustion, that anxiety and brain fog and things like that. And so Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review or give me a rating up to 5 stars. I would absolutely appreciate that. It would mean so much to me if you've been enjoying the podcast. If you would do that, I would absolutely love it. And until next time, friends, keep building wellness that fits your life. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.